In 1982, Prime Minister Thatcher visited Nissan's HQ in Japan and persuaded the chairman of the company to invest in the UK, with an assurance that there was no realistic prospect of Britain leaving the European single market because of the dependence of Britain on exports to Europe. The European single market is a trade bloc that seeks to guarantee the free movement of goods, capital, services and people within the European Union. The market encompasses the EU's 28 member states, as well as Liechtenstein, Norway, and Switzerland. The market is intended to increase economic activity, support larger economies of scale, allowing goods and components to move to the area where they are most valued, thus improving the efficiency of the allocation of resources. The car industry in Europe was the prototype for the single market, with supply chains of parts dispersed around Europe and integrated for practically instant just-in-time delivery to the production lines.
Nissan now will be a major manufacturer of cars within the United Kingdom and a major employer for the North East. Nissan will be a major exporter of cars into Europe. Nissan products will include large amounts of local content, build engines here, and thus generate many more jobs in the components part of our industry. Nissan will establish design and development facilities so that the United Kingdom company is fully involved in the design of future models.
The other thing I think, as somebody who's from the North East, I think it's important that this place continues to be successful, because I don't understand or can't contemplate what the North East would look like without a successful Nissan. I think it would be a much worse place to live than what it currently is. And I think that's something that is a responsibility on the plant, that we are important in the region. We're all North Easterners, and we've got to keep this plant moving forward.
The total number of votes cast in favour of leave was 82,000.
If, as seems likely, the UK ends up trading with Europe under WTO rules, that could add 10% to the price of a car being exported because of tariffs. Would that represent the kind of handicap you're talking about?
Oh, without any doubt. That means 10% more cost on the product only because in the UK would be a major handicap, yes, without any doubt.
And what would that mean for Sunderland?
Well, it would mean obviously that Sunderland would lose competition.
Carlos Ghosn, the Nissan chief executive, was given assurances that the Sunderland plant would remain competitive. That's the backdrop to the company's decision this week to invest not only in producing the next generation of the Qashqai model at the plant, but also moving the X-Trail, an SUV currently made in Japan, to the site. These cars are not going to be made until 2019, the point at which Britain will already have left the EU. So the government has 2.5 years in which to work out how it's going to achieve its aim that Nissan will not face any change in its trading conditions. What the Financial Times has learned is that Nissan indicated that the whole of its UK business hinged on the decision to award the Qashqai to Sunderland. The Qashqai is the biggest car made at the Sunderland plant. If the work had gone elsewhere, such as to one of the company's plants in Spain, it was very unlikely the plant would remain competitive in the long run. Before Nissan made the decision, the business secretary Greg Clark, who visited Tokyo last week, wrote to the company's executive committee, setting out in writing the assurances that the government had previously offered to the car maker. This letter means that Nissan now has a piece of paper to wave, something that's actually codified and written down, which guarantees the government's assurances to the company that it won't face a change in its trading conditions. If Nissan's decision had gone the other way, Analysts say it would almost certainly have spelt the beginning of the end for some of Britain's car industry at a time when it's been enjoying an industrial renaissance. What Nissan's decision does mean is that the other car makers are going to be banging on the door of Downing Street, demanding the same reassurances and conditions that have been offered to Nissan in order for them to make their decisions to bring their next cars to the UK as well. All of these car plants in the UK are built on the basis that they will have unfettered access to the European market. Nissan exports 80% of its cars to the EU, as does Vauxhall, as does Toyota. And even the car companies that sell their cars mainly in the UK buy more than half of their parts from the EU. So tariff-free and barrier-free access to the European single market is absolutely critical for these car makers in order to keep their plants competitive.
They voted to shape a brighter future. So we do not seek membership of the single market. We are leaving the European Union. We do not seek to hold on to bits of membership as we leave. No, the United Kingdom is leaving the European Union.
The automotive sector is concerned about how Theresa May is approaching Brexit negotiations and their financial impact.
Priority number one is keep the internal market and the European Union together. Most of the cars we export to the European Union, the 27 countries, to Italy, to France, to many parts of the European Union. And second priority, our exports to Britain. A hard Brexit would definitely be not a good solution for both sides. Everyone who has a production site at the very moment in Britain is concerned about the developments which say that you want a hard Brexit. If the doors to Europe would be in one or another way partly closed, then production in Britain would suffer.
Don't the Foreign Office realise what damage this will do to the European idea?
Well, I'm sure they do. That's why they support it.
Well, surely the Foreign Office is pro-Europe, isn't it?
Yes and no. If you'll forgive the expression. The Foreign Office is pro-Europe because it is really anti-Europe. The civil service was united in its desire to make sure that the common market didn't work. That's why we went into it.
What are you talking about?
Minister, Britain has had the same foreign policy objective for at least the last 500 years, to create a disunited Europe. In that cause, we have fought with the Dutch against the Spanish, with the Germans against the French, with the French and Italians against the Germans, and with the French against the Germans and Italians. Divide and rule, you see. Why should we change now, when it's worked so well?
That's all. Ancient history, surely.
Yes, and current policy. We had to break the whole thing up, so we had to get inside. We tried to break it up from the outside, but that wouldn't work. Now that we're inside, we can make a complete pig's breakfast of the whole thing. Set the Germans against the French against the Italians against the Dutch. The Foreign Office is terribly pleased. It's just like old times.
Surely we're all committed to the European ideal.
Really, Minister?
If not, why are we pressing for an increase in the membership?
Well, for the same reason. It's just like the United Nations, in fact. The more members it has, the more arguments it can stir up, the more futile and impotent it becomes.
What appalling cynicism.
Yes. We call it diplomacy, Minister.